Sounds good.
Okay. So welcome everyone. We should have a few more people coming in, but we want to respect your time. So we'll get the intros out of the way. So I'm Tara Brown. I'm with Western Women's Business Center. We're so glad to be co-hosting this webinar today with the Small Business Center and Jill Sparks. And of course, very happy to have Sarah Benoit here to lead us today. This is your first time joining a training at Western Women's Business Center. I know at least one of you it's not, so Leslie, you could probably give my speech for me by now, but
that's okay.
But so at Western Women's Business Center, we offer workshops like this about once a week on all different topics, from marketing to business planning, anything that you might need for your business. We also have one-on-one coaching. So if after today you think, I could really use some one-on-one support, I'll put our info in the chat, and that is at no cost to you. And then the last thing that we offer is access to capital. So we're a program of Carolina Small Business Development Fund, which provides small business loans to people who might not qualify at a traditional bank. We've also had access to some of the resiliency and COVID funding that's been available in the last year. So we have a lot of ways to support everyone. I see Jill in the chat. If you guys want to put your businesses in the chat, if we were in person, we would, network a little bit, but here we are on the internet. So if you just want to drop in the chat what your business is, so who's in the room, and I'll hand it over to Jill, and then Sarah will take us away.
All right, great. Thank you, Tara, and good morning, everyone. I'm Jill Sparks. I work at the Small Business Center with Dwayne Adams and Daphne Carson. And as Tara said, several of you have participated in some of our past programming. And what we do at the Small Business Center, there is a Small Business Center at every one of our 58 community colleges in North Carolina. We're very lucky to have such an extensive network. And so we provide free confidential counseling one-on-one to anyone and everyone, as well as training. And then at AB Tech Inca, we have an incubation program. So just like babies and chickens, we are incubating small businesses. And that's where we work with the Western Women's Business Center too. They're physically over there, and it's a great partnership. And I'm very excited about Sarah teaching this class. She's been teaching for the Small Business Center almost as long as I have been there. So about 15 years or so, and always has great words of wisdom and is energetic and makes it fun. So you're going to get a lot out of this today, and we're glad you were here, and I'll turn it over to Sarah. Thanks.
All right, so thank you everyone so much for being here. I'm really excited as usual, just because I have, as Jill said, worked with the Small Business Center and Western Women's Business Center for a long time. So I really appreciate them inviting me back to talk about this topic today. So again, if you just joined, because I know we've had people joining as we were doing intros, feel free to share your business information and introduce yourself in the chat. But just to go over a couple of housekeeping things. One, I will try to take a little break, at least for a few minutes today, just so you can get up and stretch and move around about halfway through our time together. And then also, I want to encourage everyone, you can put stuff in the chat, but you can also just unmute or come on video, whatever you're comfortable with, and feel free to jump in and ask questions throughout today's program. And also, because I mentioned to Jill when we were preparing to go live this morning, I've been working from home on and off for about 20 years. And so I think there's a ton of ideas that we all have about how to make it better. I also think it's a process of constant improvement. So I was literally using the example that over the years that I've been working from home, I'll do really well and I'll be super productive and I'll have everything kind of organized. And then I'll slide back into some bad habits, like working on my couch with the cats or doing different things that kind of affect how focused I am, or for me, my physical health is often affected by how I sit on my computer. So, I have to have these kind of practices, and I just wanted to acknowledge from the beginning that none of us are perfect. So, there are, times where, eventually my lower back hurts and I'm like, that's because you've been in your bed with the cats for like 4 hours working on something. And that's not the greatest way to treat your body. But I think we want to approach it like that, right? Especially because working from home, it was already something that I think was difficult. Some people love it. Some people hate it. It's, you just have to navigate and figure out where your sweet spot is, where you're in your environment, but you can still be, like I said, focused, productive, creative, even. That was already sort of something that was complex to navigate, but I feel like last year made it even more complicated because all of a sudden everybody's children decided to move home for like the better part of a year. And, maybe you have a spouse or roommates or somebody else you're living with, all of a sudden you're all at home all the time. And that was very different than, let's say, maybe when I would get a few hours by myself at the house to do work. It was very different having my spouse in the house doing other things while I'm trying to be productive. So, I think we just have a complicated situation and there's no 100% right answers. It really is sort of, here's some thoughts I'm going to share with you today that I think are super helpful and have definitely helped me. But I think if all of you have been working from home and there's things that are working for you, please share them in the chat, or just like I said, feel free to unmute and jump in to the conversation, because I think everybody has their own sort of nugget of wisdom that we can add to this conversation for sure. And I feel like we all became sort of experts about working from home this past year. If you weren't already doing it, you magically became much more familiar with it. So today, most of what I'm going to talk about is really about focus and productivity. There's certainly lots of other goals that we want to accomplish when we're working, but I know for me, because I am both an entrepreneur and an actual creative professional, that these are the two things that I struggle with, right, when I'm at home. So I always tell people, it's when I can come to the office over the last year, especially, it was really helpful because I was like, when I'm at home, sometimes I'm working, but I start thinking about, the stuff around my house that needs to get done. Or for instance, we bought our house in 2019, but it's 110 years old. So as most of you know, when you have this sort of older fixer-upper space, you know what I'm saying? The to-do list is never done. So focus became a really big issue for me because it was like, how can I really get a lot done and not get distracted by all the other things that need to get done? How can I have my work brain and my home brain? And productivity, I think, is just something where regardless of what you're doing, it becomes, am I maximizing my time? Right? Am I making sure that I'm not elongating tasks because I'm at home and I'm losing focus? So that's why I kind of wanted to focus today on those two things. And that's definitely where I'm coming from when I give a lot of my suggestions, is really on maintaining focus, maintaining productivity. And the reasons those became so important to me, especially last year, is one, because if I can't maintain my focus, again, my creativity suffers. If I start to let myself get spread too thin and I can't really think about a project really clearly, I'm going to struggle to actually be really creative and innovative in the process. And with productivity, I did find at the beginning of last year, my days started getting longer and longer and longer, right? So then my work is like extending from 9 in the morning to almost 9 at night. And that's okay if I want to take breaks throughout the day and do that. But I have to be aware that, having that time where it's getting broken up throughout the day sometimes makes it hard to really accomplish the things you need to accomplish efficiently. And as an entrepreneur, that's really important for me because I'm often wearing lots of hats. So we have to figure out a way to make that happen. I would suggest to everyone, if you've never read the book Deep Work, that was a book that I was already delving into in 2019, but it actually really helped me. I'm going to put that in the chat. That book is a great thing to just read about how some things that we're doing in our businesses, some things that we're doing professionally, they really do require like 2 to 4 hours or sometimes longer of uninterrupted time for you to do well. So that's not every task that you have, but there are some projects you might work on. There's some parts of being a business owner where you're managing the company and coming up with ideas where, to me, it's just, you needed that uninterrupted half a day to really think it through and really strategize and stuff like that. So I would just recommend as a sideline that Deep Work is a book that really explains how your brain behaves differently when you have uninterrupted times of focused work versus like the multitasking that we're all so used to, right? And I'm a social media person, so I have to be careful that multitasking doesn't take over my universe, because my social media management skills put me in a position to really multitask at all times. And I just have to make sure I'm building in the right time. So I know we've had a lot of people join in. Just in case you don't know me already, my name's Sarah Benoit. I'm co-founder and lead instructor of the JB Media Institute. And I also own a web design and consulting business in addition to the school that I run. So not only am I educating and training people around various things related to marketing especially, but also business. But I'm also still working in the field quite a bit, right? And actually building websites, actually working on SEO projects and things like that. So that's where my life ends up being this interesting combination of training, and that's one part of my brain, and then also really producing work, which is a different part of my brain. And so my home life, when I'm working from there, it really has to support both of those kind of different aspects of the work that I do, because it's just very different. You know, when I'm on presenting and teaching, that's just one part of myself and one set of my skills. It requires a different type of focus, a different type of productivity. When I'm building websites, there's all sorts of things around that type of project that I have to work to, again, be creative, be efficient. And, you know, my home space had to become really flexible for all those things. So just so you know, I taught a class last Friday as well. The link that I'm sharing in the chat now, if you'd like a copy of my slides, you can download them there. So, and if you didn't make last week, the slides are up there as well for you to explore if you're interested in that sort of conversation. So creating a workspace that ensures your success is the number one thing. And there's a lot of different components that go into this. I feel like, again, you know, everybody's got their own preferences. So that's where you really wanted, I'm sure most of you figured out this year what some of your preferences are. I see a big difference between people who have static workstations and people who have mobile workstations. So I saw somebody in the chat who mentioned, I have different areas around the house where I work. Yeah, there's some of us that have to do that. I have to do that. I am just not good staying in one place. It's almost like my brain just gets bored. Like I need a change of scenery throughout the day. And I like to sit versus stand and do different things like that. So some people have kind of their one place in their house where they're really comfortable and they've got all their favorite things and everything they need is at their fingertips. They've maybe got a beautiful desk, you know, that they've had built into a home office space. They've got all their, like I said, their favorite chair, their favorite lighting, all their ways of plugging things in and all their sort of office items that they need throughout the day. So some of you are going to have this more like home office space that you've built up. And then some of us are going to be like me. And for me, it's funny, I don't know about some of you, but I'm in my 40s now. I've been working on computers for 20 years, basically. And my body just can't stay in the same place for long amounts of time. Sometimes I need to do 4 or 6 hours of work on a computer, but if I sit in one place at one desk and do that, I'm going to be crunched up and I'm going to be really tense and tight afterwards, right? So I've actually put together a way to move throughout my day. And what I did was create kind of what are the things that I have to have around me to feel like I'm really set up to work, because I need to be able to move those things from a sitting down position to a standing area. You know, sometimes I like to sit on my yoga ball, sometimes I like to sit in a chair. So I've got these different things, but I have to make sure that I can easily sort of pick myself up and go. I don't want to spend 20 minutes moving my stuff around the house every time I have to do it. So if you are a mobile workstation person, it's like there's kind of a few things I think you can do. One, know what that kit is. The great thing is I was lucky from traveling for work so much. I already had this a little bit created because I was traveling for work and I would have to work in hotels and I would have to work in different places. So I kind of could easily adapt that into my day-to-day life and say, all right, here's what I need. But I also, when I got home, I had to have those spaces open, right? So I had to make sure, especially for me, because it's just me and my wife at home. I had to really say to her, I need to work in these 3 spaces throughout the day. So you can't keep putting your stuff there. See what I'm saying? Because like that creates, again, extra steps for me, where when I go to move from my home office into the kitchen for a while to stand up, if you've already piled stuff onto that area, it's not as easy for me to shift. And so we had to kind of like, I felt like we made this little navigation map for the house during the day, which was like, I'm going to need to be here, here, and here. You're going to need to be here, here, and here. So it's like, let's make sure we have that communicated. And if you have kids, I think it even got a little more complicated because a lot of times they were doing school, so you were trying to figure out where is everybody comfortable. So that could take some time to figure out, but I think it's really, if you can just take the time to do those observations, have those conversations, it's going to be better. And I would also say if you have younger people in your home, some of us that are older are a little more conscious of the wear and tear on our bodies of doing Zoom all day, being on our phone all day. So I think in some ways, when we do this, we can actually help some of our younger people around us to give them some better habits too, to remind them, hey, you need to sit, you need to stand, because that's just healthy for everybody. So think about that piece of it. What has worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Now, again, for those of you who joined a little later, I want to encourage you to jump in and ask any questions. The right tech gear for me became just key. And I taught a lot of classes on this last year. I've also used a lot of gear because I've been teaching online for quite a few years now. So again, I've already had to go through some of this before we ever got to the transition that everybody kind of went through. But I think when you're talking about working from home, the technical stuff that you have at your fingertips really is going to help you focus versus not focus, right? Or be productive versus not being productive. Some of us had less of a budget than others. So I want to encourage you, this stuff doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I feel like last year I upped my game for probably somewhere around $70 at first. I wanted to stay under $100 in things that I bought. Eventually, as we moved through the year, I did things like invest in my Wi-Fi headset, which was a game changer, especially for when I was doing meetings and teaching and training, because now I don't have to be close to the computer. I can back up and I can stretch, I can move around, I can have a little bit more freedom. This was a little bigger investment, but I tested things out so that over time I could really know if I was going to spend money on the tech gear, what is really right for me. And so I think it sort of comes down to a quick checklist when you're at home. If you're going to be on camera a lot working from home, you do need to make sure that the webcam that's built into your laptop, or if you have a desktop, is it really working? Is it good? Do you feel comfortable? One of the things that I think is really important, and this may seem like a small thing, but when you get on camera with other people when you're working from home and you don't feel comfortable about the way that you look, you start to feel awkward, right? So I think I got to a point where I was like, I have to make myself look cute because I'm gonna have to look at myself a lot and I want to feel confident. And I'm not feeling confident when I get on the camera and I'm like pasty white. And I just, it's like, you can see all my wrinkles. I'm like, okay, no, this is not working. I need to take this and make sure that I feel comfortable with the camera I'm using. And lighting came into play as well. So I definitely had already invested in a ring light, but it was funny. I didn't want to buy a lighting kit, but I would position my lamps at home on either side of me, right? Because it softened all the lighting. It lit me from the side. So it wasn't like some top down, lighting of like the fan in our living room, because all of that just gave me shadows, sometimes it made me just look kind of dark and sort of sullen. And I was like, that doesn't make me feel excited when I'm on camera. So really thinking about that. I've also got a tripod for my smartphone and my tablet so that it's really easy for me to use multiple devices if I need to, especially again, when I'm talking on the phone or I'm meeting with people via Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Meetings or GoToMeeting. I use all those different tech pieces. I just wanted to be able to really move things around and navigate stuff. I got a great simple tripod for my phone that actually clips to my desk, or it can clip anywhere. And it basically has a ring light and holds my phone, and I can position it anywhere, right? So I can get sort of a different angle of things. I can change things up a little bit. I can be doing something on my computer while I'm also having a meeting. So it just gave me more flexibility. And that tripod was like $25 at Best Buy as an investment, so it was really fast and easy. I'm also a big fan of getting earbuds, headsets. You can get a professional microphone. I definitely have a standalone mic that I use quite frequently. It's called a Yeti, and I love it. But the truth is, once I went home, it's like each room has kind of a different echo or a different sound space. I didn't really have the money again to make like a studio where we'd had the greatest audio in the world. So I found that earbuds and headsets became really my best friend, and that technology is really advanced. One of my favorite brands, which I've given you links in the slide deck, is called Skull Candy. And I love how affordable their earbuds and their headsets are and how clear the audio is. I even have one headset from them that I've had for like 10 years. It's my backup to my wireless. And this thing is even like slowly falling apart. It still works beautifully. I get clean audio off of it every time, even when I'm recording some types of things for recording little videos for different clients and things like that. So audio is such a key piece to all engagement online with people. As a matter of fact, Americans will accept pixelated garbage as a video if they can hear you properly. So they actually, if what you're saying is valuable, they'll accept lower quality visual as long as the audio is really good. So to avoid echoes with other people when you have them on camera, to avoid any type of, background kind of noise and things like that, having good headset is so valuable. And then I also have an external mouse, an external keyboard, an external screen that I can plug my laptop into. A lot of that has to do with ergonomics. I also have a laptop stand. That's so that my laptop can be up here and I'm not looking down for hours and hours at my computer. That's actually really unhealthy physically for your spine, your neck, your shoulders, right? It makes you hunch over a bit. You'd be surprised at how many people in business, regardless of the industry, we work on computers so much, we actually get chronic neck issues because when we're on our phones and we're on our laptops and our desktops, our neck goes slightly forward while we look at a screen. It's sort of a typical habit that we all have. It can cause major degeneration over the years in your body, especially your spine. So, having something that lifts up everything to eye level, I have my mouse down here so that, again, I don't have to reach up to use the mouse on my laptop. The other day I was being lazy. Again, we often fall into our bad patterns. I didn't want to use my mouse because I was just busy. And I started working on this website and I had my hand up here where my laptop is on the stand. And after about 2 hours, my whole elbow started to really hurt. And it's because I was holding my arm up for 2 hours. I mean, I don't know if you've ever done that intentionally, but it's actually very hard to hold your arm up for 2 hours. So I didn't even realize I was doing that until it started hurting me. And then I was like, okay, I need to get my mouse and put it back here. So having things that, again, allow you to kind of sit in a comfortable position and not kind of hunch you over is going to be really valuable. And then I always have a mobile charging station. And all I mean by that is I have a surge protector, an extension cord. I have these things that I need that I can just plug and unplug one thing and move everything around with me. Right. So everybody's got their own things they need to charge. I have everything for my phone, my tablet, and my laptop all in one surge protector. So I'm not trying to unplug 10 things. I'm not trying, it's all kind of easily organized in there. So the links that I shared are just some really great affordable places that if you don't have any of this gear, you can look into it because a lot of it is super affordable. And you can just get different styles of things too, based on what you like or don't like. So especially with something like a laptop stand or a tripod, there's literally so many versions of this stuff that you can play around with. And then, like I said, part of this comes down to the importance of ergonomics. Again, as somebody who's been in business for 20 years, I really just have no words for how important it is to recognize that the difference in how your body is going to react every decade is massive because it's repetitive motion. It's not because you're old. So I do want to correct that. It's not because we're old that it gets harder. It's because repetitive motion is actually bad for everybody, right? So I go to a chiropractor every month. I have since I was probably about 27 years old because I already had terrible physical problems when I was 27. I had been working from home for about 3 years and I was sitting at my desk for such long hours. I slipped a disc in my back from working. That's it. It was because I didn't really have a shutoff time, right? So like I would just keep working and keep working because as an entrepreneur, there was never an end to stuff that needed to be done. And I just overdid it. So I was young and in great shape. and literally slipped a disc in my back and couldn't sit down for 3 months. So I learned early on in the game that if we don't pay attention to this, we actually really will hurt ourselves. So understanding, the physical health of things is not just for those of us that are getting older and, we're just old and we have problems. No. If you're 25, you should be paying attention to this as well. There are all sorts of younger people now that have degeneration in their spine from just looking at their phone too much. So truly, it's like really important that we pay attention to this stuff and have these conversations. And when you're working from home, it's even more important because I think, again, we have tendencies where we're doing things in a moment it's really not ergonomic and it's not healthy. So the biggest things we have to protect are our neck and shoulders. The biggest things we have to protect are our lower back, because that spinal column that we have is completely affecting our brain function. So our productivity is directly related to how our body feels and whether or not our brain can communicate to the rest of our body correctly. And the way that it does that is through your spine. So, this is why you have all these things that we all already know, right? Like get up and stretch every couple of hours and set a timer so you don't forget. And I'm in the tech industry, so we have a lot of these like things. It's so funny. I tried all sorts of apps and different things. And you know what I ended up finding? If I just take my old Tourney kitchen timer and I set it for like 2 hours or an hour, like that is the easiest thing for me because it's going to ding into my face. And I'm literally going to be like, oh, I have to get up. So, if you want to have fancy apps that do all sorts of things and tell you to drink your water, cool. You can also use very simple things that will just help you not get into this habit of kind of going into repetitive motion for such long periods of time. And I want to really help you all realize that when it comes to working from home, a lot of things that you're already doing at home that are not work are also repetitive motion, right? So that's the problem that we're having. Like we're all working a lot. And then on top of that, the things that we do in our own homes after hours are still very technology based and still very repetitive in general. So even when you're scrubbing your bathroom, you're doing a repetitive motion to do that. Even when you're doing your laundry, you're doing this repetitive motion to make it happen. It's actually a really hard thing in the modern world for all of us because it's super not good for you. That's why it's important to take walks, right? It's important to stretch and make your body do something different. Yeah, and Rachel, I see you were saying the timer really works for you too. Yeah, I don't know why. For me, there's something about the old school timer. It like makes me think of like my grandmother baking. So it's funny when it dings, I'm like excited, right? Because I have this like sort of familial kind of I think sentimental connection to it. Also, I think for me, because I'm on technology a lot, using apps on my phone is not always the answer, right, to my problem. Because now I'm just looking at my phone all the time, which is something that I'm, a lot of times I'm trying to get breaks, from that actual technical piece. Like I want to walk away from the devices. And so I have to do that. Yeah. And Leslie, I have a standing desk too. That's really, really helped me. I mean, I stand for at least half my day every day, and it makes a big difference. Because again, it's just triggering your body to do something different, it's letting your brain communicate to your body in a different way. And again, sometimes you have to test different things. So don't be afraid to change it up. If you've been doing something for a while, you feel like you need to kind of change the energy, you can do something as simple as changing out where you're sitting, changing out where you're standing, things like that.
And I
Also,
find that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, jump in.
I find that I'm not as creative if I'm sitting at my desk trying to be creative. So I will go do dishes. Or one day I was like, I gotta get outside. I can't stand it right now. So I went outside and weeded, and I ended up having to bring my journal out because all these ideas were coming out. I was like pulling weeds and like, oh, that's another good idea. And then I walk back inside. So I find that changing that kind of stuff, the activity helps me.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely last year. It's funny. I started taking walks on my lunch break, which I always said I wanted to do, but I never did. I just worked through it at my desk, But then last year, because it was just such a different, I don't know, my schedule really shifted. And it was like, regardless of where I was, because sometimes I would come to the office, sometimes I would be at the home office, I would really like make sure that I walked for at least 15 minutes because it would literally like reset me to do that. Because it's like exactly what you said. I've been staring at a screen trying to come up with great ideas. You know, it's like there's a point in which that productivity is really actually hurt by overthinking it, you know, and that creativity is really hurt by overthinking it, trying to force it. It's like
Yep.
as soon as my body started doing something new, the flow would change, right?
Yeah, and I did that too with biking. I decided I wanted to, I kept putting it on my schedule, and then I finally scheduled it, which is time and place. It's how you add a new habit. And I started biking on a regular basis. Now I feel so good because now it is a habit for me. I'm doing it twice a week and then once on the weekend. So 3 times a week. And it feels so much better. My body and every part of my productivity has gotten better.
Yeah, and I was just looking at the chat, seeing some of the other comments here. So Tara, yeah, it's amazing. It's so funny. I got so many deals from Wayfair last year. Just throwing that out there to everybody. They really ran a lot of promos last year that were super helpful for replacing. Like I had an old chair that I needed to replace, and I just, you know, I didn't want to spend a ton of money on things. And Azuri, I just wanted to say it's so funny. Sometimes my laptop stand is so high that I'll alter it, and I literally just stick a box under it. I've done that many times where I'm just like, I'm going to change the level I'm looking at so my neck isn't in the same place all day, because I personally have a lot of neck and shoulder problems. So it's funny, sometimes we like buy a bunch of gear, but it's like you really can just grab stuff. I've stacked up books, like 5 books, and stuck my laptop on it. So yeah, there's so many different things you can do to just like get yourself, like I said, out of that repetitive motion. Yeah, and Joyce is working on getting an outdoor work set up. So I think there's a lot of us that are working on that now that it's warm, going back to our porches again to think of how we can be outside and get some of that natural light, which we're about to talk about, because I think that's really, really valuable. And, you know, in Asheville, I go to our city council meetings on YouTube every other week. I mean, I really appreciate that even our own city council members are sometimes doing the city council meeting on their own porch. Like they're outside sitting on their porch. You can see the trees, you can see the sunset and things like that. But they have to sit again on those Zoom meetings for city council for long hours, you know? And so I think it's really interesting when you see people actually doing that. It's really important because again, that lighting that you're getting from being outside is very different than what you're getting when you're inside with that sort of unnatural light. Yeah, and Leslie was saying, you know, having your arms rest naturally. Again, that has a lot to do too with pulling your shoulders back, which is a big issue for so many of us, regardless again of what our work is. We're on the computer or the phone a lot. And so we have to keep kind of putting ourselves like in the right spot so that we're not, again, hunching over all the time. But lighting, like I said, to that outdoor point, lighting is really valuable. If you study lighting, you know, obviously you realize it has a big impact on the brain, and that has a big impact on our circadian rhythms. And so it even affects the way that we sleep. This is why it is a really good idea at night when you're trying to get ready for bed, you know, that we all discipline ourselves not to keep looking at our screens, because the light of a screen can trigger your brain to not go to sleep. Right? There's like a lot of studies on this. And so it is important, especially if you want to get a good long sleep cycle, that you're not like laying in bed on your phone until you pass out. It's like, it literally affects whether or not your brain can like do what it needs to do while you're resting. And again, that has a lot to do with how productive we can be the next day when we get up. One of the things that I learned real quick last year is that a lot of the lighting in my house was this top down ceiling lights, right? Like we have ceiling fans in every room because we didn't have air conditioning actually until last year. So we've always had this kind of top down lighting piece. The more and more that I was working from home last year, the more I realized like it really affects me during the day. So like I said, I started by putting 2 of my living room lamps on either side of me while I worked. So I would get this side lighting that was just something different. It didn't just make me look better on camera, but also made me feel different. I also used plant lights last year because my house doesn't get a lot of direct sunlight. I am in a small house covered by trees. So we're not going to get like that direct sunlight through our windows. And sometimes that, you know, after a day inside in my house, I really needed some of this like UV rays. So I had plant lights in the house because we have to help our plants in the first place. I started angling them towards my desk more frequently because I was like, you know, and even sometimes putting the plants around me. made a difference just in outside of the lighting. Having the plants around me made me feel different when I was inside. You know, for 4 or 5 days I'm working from home, it feels like I'm in this kind of cave because of the way our house is set up. Um, you know, being able to play with some of that stuff is just really valuable. You know, turning things on and off, like I said, borrowing lamps. Even when I came into this office last year for teaching, I brought some of my living room lamps into the office because everything in here is like this top down kind of very bright lighting. And after sitting in the conference room for an afternoon or sitting at my desk for an afternoon, sometimes I would realize like, you know, and it's funny that I didn't think about those things when we had lots of people here. Because I was always distracted by other people in the office. Last year, everybody in our office went home and I was only using the office for teaching. So I became a lot more aware of how just even the office space was impacting me because I had time to think about it, you know, and I would be in the conference room teaching for 4 or 5 hours sometimes. And I would realize these sort of top down fluorescent lights, they wear on you after a while, right? And so this is something you can really think about. The other thing that is kind of amazing that I've really studied a little more deeply is what they call vertical surface illumination. This is actually kind of a design approach. So like interior designers will use it as a way of making spaces look bigger and feel better. But it's really about how when you light walls in a vertical way, rather than just lighting like your desk surface, right? From a horizontal perspective. So a lot of us will have lights around our desks that are kind of pointing down and they're illuminating our desk. That's a horizontal illumination. Then sometimes you can have sconces or you can have lights that come from the top and the side, right? It'll create this vertical illumination on different walls. There's actually an effect that that has on your brain because you're building in more visual space and depth. And again, because I live in a small house, this is something that just became important to me because I'm in this, we have about a 750 square foot space. And again, it's covered by trees and it's really small. It's 110 years old. So all the rooms are like little boxes. It's really easy to just feel like you're in this dark bubble alone working. And again, it's like, not that that's necessarily bad, but I feel like if you're trying to keep your creativity up, if you're trying to get into the flow of something, if you're trying to actually raise your energy, so you have more energy while you're working, it's hard to do that in a space like that. It kind of makes you like, just get all comfortable and want to like hole up, you know, and that's not the same energy, I think, for really trying to be, like I said, productive to accomplish a bunch of goals. So illuminance has to do with this idea of the amount of light that's striking a surface. And like I said, if you can become conscious of what is being illuminated, is it the horizontal or the vertical space? If you can add more vertical illumination, it will have a direct effect on just literally like how you feel. So this is just a good example of kind of interesting office lighting, right? Where they put it on the wall and it's kind of scattering this illumination that's in a vertical position, right? There may still be lights, as you can see up here in the ceiling, that are doing the horizontal illumination, but it's really about mixing these things together so that your brain is just processing things in a different way. But this is something that I started digging into last year because I started researching, it's funny, I started researching what it's like to work from home in a tiny home because I felt like my house was having the same problems that a tiny home has. And I was like, how can I solve these issues in a way that's pretty straightforward, not too expensive, but I'm working with small spaces. I'm working with, you know, not too much natural lighting. How can I solve that issue? And this was a big conversation that people were having online that I thought was really fascinating. Because I work in the design world, I mean, I've already explored a lot of different things that have to do with human-centered design that has a lot to do with interior experiences. And so digging into this, it really helped me, just like I said, even if I'm using the lighting I already have, to where I position it and how it makes a difference in how I feel. So I want to just open up, are there any questions just about gear or suggestions you want to share with people about things that you did? I know we were putting a lot of cool stuff in the chat, but I just want to make sure you feel like you've got time to ask questions if you have any about different things. And again, you can feel free to chat in or just unmute and jump in. I'll give you all just a minute to type if that's what you're doing.
Good morning, Sarah and everybody. It's this is Leslie Lewis. I want to thank you that the tips on the lamps and the lighting and kind of spreading out that light is a wonderful tip. And that helps me because sometimes I feel like I can be closed in my office, even though I'm intentionally up and away from everything in my house so I can concentrate on work. But yeah, having the lamps and taking that lighting down from top down, that certainly helped me a lot. Thank you. That's a great tip.
Yeah, I'm so glad because again, that's something that I had never really thought about until last year when I just realized I was alone for lots of hours in the same space. And prior to COVID, even though I was still doing a lot of similar work, I was constantly changing my location throughout the day. I was traveling a lot for work. I was just, I don't know, I was in this more natural state where things were just changing all the time throughout my day. And so when I went home and got into like being in my home office, you know, like I said, for a bunch of days in a row, just by myself, all of a sudden I just started to notice different things.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, like this isn't making me feel good. You know, this is making me feel like I want to go to bed. I'm a
Yes.
high energy person too. And I really realized having darker spaces is just going to bring my energy down, you know, like, especially because my home office is actually in what is our guest bedroom. So there is actually a bed in there. It was funny, like as the day would go on, I would start to be like, I'm feeling called to lay on that bed with the cats and like not focus myself. And I really, it's so crazy, but it was as simple as the lighting in the room that made a big difference for me. Because it was just, like I said, making me feel like I was in a cave,
Yes.
you know?
Oh, that makes a lot of
So
sense.
it's little things
Yes.
like that that really came up last year for me that even after all these years of working from home, I had just never really put that much thought into it. Yeah, and Rachel was saying opening the blinds and the curtains. Yeah, again, in my house, unfortunately, I can open a lot of that stuff. I'm still not getting very much light from it, but when you're in a space that's got a good window, you know, pulling that window up, it makes such a difference. Like I said, that's why I use the plant lights because it mimics a little bit more of that natural lighting. And it does change kind of how you feel inside, which is really awesome.
Sarah, I want to add that my stepson, he plays a lot of video games. Of course, he's 11, but he bought me these blue screen glasses. We only pay $7 for it, but it helps.
Yeah.
It helps me a lot. So yeah, it was a good $7 investment.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for sharing that because that's something that I think I just bought new glasses a few months ago and I went ahead and paid for them to put some stuff on my lenses that will help my eyes actually deal with the screen better. Because again, after all these years I've been on the computer, I'm actually developing astigmatism in the right eye from looking at screens for so long, you know, and so I can help stop that, but I have to like have the right protection. And it's kind of funny because, you know, the guy who was working with me on my glasses, I got my prescription updated. He was like, you know, you should take some time off the screens. And I was like, good luck, man. I mean, like, that's ideal. Yes, ideal. I'm only on a screen 8 hours a day, but like, I don't see that happening anytime soon. No, like my life is running off of, you know, this thing, and I have a tablet to boot. I'm like, I want to say that I'm not going to be on there and that every day at 5 o'clock, I'm going to be done. I was like, but I've been trying to say that for like 10 years and it literally never happens. So I'm like, I think I just have to really take better care of myself and realize like, you know, I have to put some extra energy into things like that, even though sometimes they're the smallest detail, but they'll make this huge difference. Yeah, and Joyce was saying moisturizing eye drops. That's what my wife does quite frequently. She almost always has eye drops on her desk. Yeah, and a pad for standing when you're standing at your desk. Yeah, having something underneath of you. It's so funny. Sometimes when I'm here at the office, this sounds random, but I had this random piece of faux fur that I had used to make a costume years ago. But when I'm here in the office, I throw out the faux fur so I can stand on it because it's kind of padded. It also absorbs sound really well. So when I'm talking, a lot of times when I'm recording something, I want less of an echo. I will just like throw out faux fur like all across the conference room or the home office because it absorbs all the sound and it really just helps things. You know, like I said, it makes me feel more confident, right, in just what I'm producing. Yeah, Rachel, it's also visually fun. I've definitely had moments over the last year where people have come to the office to pick something up and I'm the only one here. And I'm in the conference room teaching a class and there's like faux fur everywhere and my lamps from my living room. Like one person swung by and then they sent the Slack message that was like, Sarah has moved into the office, I think. And I was like, I'm not sleeping there, y'all. Like, I just need a place where the internet is solid for 4 to 6 hours, which I struggled with that last year at my home office. I really was, I was doing great working from there, but then when I would have a long class, my internet really became a problem. So that's really the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is, so I don't know about all of you, but I had this issue last year that started in April, where all of a sudden I would look at my wife and I would be like, you know, every day in our neighborhood is now Christmas and Thanksgiving. Okay, so everyone in our neighborhood is home streaming Netflix. And like, this is causing a big crimp in my style as far as the internet speed is happening. And I was really debating last year whether or not we needed to pay to upgrade our internet at the house. But I want to tell you before you pay to upgrade your internet speed, because I think any of the internet providers, they'll just upgrade you and charge you more money per month, is to do some testing to figure out what the issue is. And even if you haven't had problems, this is a great sort of checklist to go through to just make sure, again, that you are getting the best, most useful access to your Wi-Fi and your internet that you have. So Google has a free internet speed test that I really love. I'm actually just going to share this real quick. Quick thumbs up. Can people see Google right now? I just want to make sure. Awesome. So when you just do test my internet speed, their test comes up right at the top, right? So you don't have to go to a website. You just have to click run the speed test. And Google is going to tell you where you're at for uploading and downloading. You know, you can see that they kind of test it for a little bit. It'll give me kind of a little report here at the end in a second. But to me, rather than sort of letting people talk you into spending more money, it's like, let's actually figure out why we've got some slowdowns. So you can see it's pulling up my speed here at the office. Of course, this is our office where we would usually have like 20 people in here. So we have a pretty good internet speed because we need to handle multiple people doing videos and all sorts of things. But you know, it's literally kind of telling us, hey, the internet connection is fast. You know, here's some of the basic data, and you should be able to handle multiple devices streaming HD videos at the same time. So that's a standard that we have for our office with a lot of people. You can do this at home, and it's going to test your home internet as well. So I really appreciate, you know, having this kind of available just to test things. And Rachel, yeah, switching to Google Fiber and dumping Spectrum saved you so much frustration. Wi-Fi extenders are really great. Vanessa was saying, yeah, we're going to talk about those things. But yeah, if you can access Google Fiber, you know, I do think you can change over your internet, or like I said, even upgrade what you've got. But there are a few things you can do to figure out what's going on first before you actually take that final step to say, I got to switch providers. But I love that Google makes this so straightforward, right? Tests in under 30 seconds. It'll transfer less than 40 megabytes of data. You know, so it's letting you know it should work on almost every system that's out there. I really just suggest if you're having any problems with the internet, you just run that free test, right? And you're able to really understand what's going on. If you have problems, it's going to tell you a bunch of details about what the issues are. Now, the other question is, how old is your modem or your router? Because this is actually what happened to me. I had a modem that I got when I moved into my house in 2003, right? And so the problems with the internet weren't actually my provider, wasn't actually my computer. It was literally that, you know, the internet provider that you have, they don't always call you to say, hey, yo, you've had your modem for 17 years. That technology is really advanced. We should probably trade it out for a new one. Nobody ever said that, right? So that was a question I should have asked at the beginning of my problems last year. How old is this modem? Oh, I moved in here in 2003. I should probably think about that, right? First, I went to the router instead. I did buy a new router because I thought it was our Wi-Fi signal. And I plugged that in. It did help. It just didn't still get us up to where we needed to be. Sometimes you do have to evaluate how old is your computer. Does it need any updates? Is there a new operating system? Are your browsers all up to date? All of that stuff is sometimes going to affect how quickly you're accessing the internet. I have a Macintosh computer and it's awesome. I found an amazing program that allows me to kind of clean my Mac regularly. And it's, there's lots of different programs out there. This was just one I could afford because it was like $35 a year. But basically clean my Mac, it checks for different things on my system that are slowing me down. So like if I have lots of attachments in my email program that I haven't deleted, if I have big files that are like 5 years old that I probably don't need anymore, it actually goes and finds that stuff, lets me review it and remove it from my computer. So I also did that step and I made sure like my computer is running really, really well. The range extender, like I said, some of you have larger homes, your home office might be a space really far away from the router or the modem, and that creates an issue. So some people will move their modem and their router to a more centralized spot, but other people will just get a range extender. And for those of you who are making outdoor office spaces, this can be a great solution to the problem, because if you can get a range extender that extends out to your patio, out to your porch, out to your backyard, that's going to actually give you stronger Wi-Fi out there. But essentially, this is something that I think really affects our productivity. Anytime that it's taking longer to download, upload, pull up a website, because I'm in technology, slow internet will literally ruin my life. I mean, I have to say, it's like, there are just points where like everything I'm doing, the productivity of it is dependent on how fast things will upload and download, especially when I'm building a website, right? Like that stuff has to flow very quickly. The same way my computer needs to be really up to date and clean, because if I don't have that, everything I'm doing starts to take more and more time. And for me as an entrepreneur, the more time it takes, the less I'm making per hour, literally. So if a project that I said was going to be 40 hours or 20 hours is suddenly now taking 35 or 60, like that's literally just reducing the amount of pay that I make by the hour. So I am really cognizant of like, what is my time worth? And if things start to slow down, I really have to stop and solve the problem, because otherwise it's really actually hurting the bottom line of my business in a lot of ways. The amazing thing is, so once I kind of replaced a lot of things, again, I wish I'd started asking the question about the modem. I finally said, okay, I'm going to take the modem down to Spectrum and have them change it out. So this is kind of an amazing story, because here I am, a technical person. I made the giant mistake of going in the wrong order. So I get down there with my modem to Spectrum and I go to turn it in, and she's like, oh, that's not ours. And I'm like, no, it is. And she's like, no, that can't be ours. That doesn't even look right. And I'm like, well, I moved into this house and got the internet there in like 2003. So I'm pretty sure this modem is from 2003. And she was like, I can't believe it. And she scans the barcode and she was like, oh my God, that's ours. She was like, look at this thing. It doesn't even make sense. Then she took it around to everybody working at Spectrum and was like, look at this. What is this ancient thing that this girl just brought to us? So what she explained to me is that our modem had a max of about 50 megabytes of speed. The new modems that they give you, they start at 200. So I'm using a piece of technology that can do a quarter of what the current technology can do. And that's something, because I'm not a hardware person, right? It's like, it's just amazing. I'm not a hardware person. I just didn't think to ask this question. So that's something where now I know I have this checklist where if we're having problems, I'm gonna go through the checklist in a little bit of a different way down the road. And Leslie was mentioning buy your modem instead. Yeah, luckily right now with Spectrum, you don't pay for the modems. You just get them because you're a customer, and they just trade it out, and if you have any problems, they fix it for you. So in that sense, it's been actually really helpful. A Charter did used to charge us for it. That changed when they got purchased. But I'm excited because at this point, we haven't had to upgrade our internet speed, because it was really changing that one piece of technology and just upping our game with some others that really made it work. And my wife also works on the internet throughout the day, so it was really valuable. for us to go through this process and just figure out down the road, this is what we have to do. Also, I found router technology got a lot better and the extender technology got a lot better. So now, like with our wireless router, if something's not working, I have an app on my phone where I can go in and test the router function, and it'll really tell me like, this is what's going on. And that really helps me because then I can more easily see, is it a problem with Spectrum? Is it a problem with our tech in the house? Is it a problem with my computer? It's literally going to have this on the app. It has this little area that just like highlights where the issues are. And so that makes it a lot easier for me to just know. But that's really important for us because I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, so much of my life is already dependent on whether or not we have internet access, and especially Wi-Fi, because I only have one computer in the house now that actually plugs in to the Ethernet. Like my laptop doesn't even have an Ethernet plug. I couldn't even do it if I wanted to. And so, if we go a day or 2 days without good Wi-Fi, it really affects both of our businesses big time. It creates a lot of stress, right? And before COVID, I could just run to the coffee shop. I could run somewhere nearby and get a Wi-Fi signal when our house was down. All of a sudden, that wasn't an option if we had a bad day. I couldn't really go anywhere else. So that made a big difference in our house really working all the time, being reliable. And again, when everybody's at home, not having this experience where everything starts slowing down. Because I'm like, like Lena and I were literally saying to each other, it's like 6 o'clock, everybody's on Netflix right now, right? Because our internet the speed just died. And so, we could really see that. I'm so excited that now we've been able to go some time without that problem. And it was really just, again, going over the tech, making sure we checked everything. So again, if there's any questions about tech stuff, please feel free to jump in and let me know. Or feel free to keep going in the chat and sharing all those great ideas. I really appreciate you all doing that. But the last part of what I want to talk about today is really just more workflow. And how we really make, like I said, working from home just awesome. It's interesting because, I worked from home for about 10 years. Then I got co-working space about a decade ago. And I started working in co-working spaces. And I loved it because I was lonely. And I had just been alone a lot. I wanted to be around creative people. I wanted some people to have influence around me. I especially wanted to be around other business owners. Because it just fueled me, right? It just like made it more interesting. And also throughout the day when I was at co-working, other people would inspire me to get up, move around, play some ping pong, have a conversation, right? So I wouldn't get sort of caught up in sitting at my desk the whole time. I've also had periods in the last 10 years where I've been working at co-working, or I've been working in the office with my team with JB Media Institute. And I've needed some alone time. I'm like, okay, I'm an extrovert, so I'm getting distracted by everybody. I'm going to go to the home office so I can really focus in on this project for the next 4 hours. And like I said, maybe do some of that deep work, right? And just focus in on getting one thing completed and done. Because if I drag it out for 3 days, I can do that, but it's not the most productive way to handle it. And sometimes, especially with creative work, like I'm trying to come up with a new curriculum and document it so that I can present it to a client. The truth is, I need everybody to go away from me when I'm writing curriculum. I can't be answering emails either, and I can't be answering my phone either. Like that stuff has to get turned off. Slack has to go away. I don't want any alerts while I'm doing that stuff, because the truth is I have to get into the flow, right? I have to actually find that flow inside that allows me to come up with great ideas and put them into action. And when I'm multitasking, that flow does not occur sometimes. So, this is where I really started to figure out, like, where are my best spaces for these different types of things? Not just, physically, how am I working and things like that, but the different types of work that I do is really important. And one of the things that my business partner, Justin Bellamy, really taught me when we first started working together 10 years ago was, I remember him saying to me early on when we started our business partnership was, look, remember, you have to have time to work in the business as well as on the business. They're not the same thing. Working in the business is producing the work. It's making the products, making the services, providing the customer service, answering the phones, right? It's like doing all the cleaning the bathroom, whatever we're all doing. a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we play all the roles, like big and small, right? So it was like, that's working in the business. That's when you're in production mode. That's when you're in client service mode. But working on the business is figuring out what the vision is in the bigger picture and actually managing your company, right? Like actually taking the time to really understand that you're trying to grow a company, you're trying to reach goals. Working on the business requires a different type of mindset and a different type of flow to go there than it does to churn out the work. So when you're the visionary of the company and also the person that actually makes the products and services, these are just like, they deserve different spaces in your workflow, and they deserve a different kind of approach, because I think it's just such a different thing. Like when we're in production mode, we're on deadline, we're on task, right? When we're in customer service mode, we're focusing on other people, we're focusing on their experience, we're focusing on all these kind of details. When we get into entrepreneur mode and we're the visionary of the business, we're actually trying to project where we're going to be in 5 years, right? I don't know how you all feel, but man, it was super awesome in 2020 how much harder it got to project where the heck I'm going in the next year. Nevertheless, like 5, and so I really needed space from a work perspective when Justin and I were problem solving, or when I'm working on Creative Original, my web design business with my one contractor over there, when him and I are talking about how things are changing and what's going on, it had to be a different space for me to do that. Physically and in my mind, because those spaces, like I said, it required just me accessing a different part of who I am, the entrepreneur part of me, right? And so I think this is where we have to really think about structure and how we're building out our actual workflow. And I will say this is something that I probably prioritize at a high level because I'm a marketing professional. So if any of you are also business owners that do your own marketing, we all know, like, for lack of a nicer way of putting it, marketing sucks. It's horrible. There's so much going on. There's so many things that you're trying to manage, from basic customer service that you're doing, which is part of your marketing, all the way up to all the promotions and campaigns and outreach and networking and all these kind of other things that we do. And so, I've really, over the years as a marketing teacher, we constantly talk about workflow, because most of us have to find out how to make the workflow really good so that we are efficient, so we're creative, so we can accomplish all of our goals and post stuff on social media every single day, while we also are getting time to be super creative and write long form content. And, so we're always trying to balance these things. So for me, workflow, like I said, is one of those points of never ending improvement. And if you're an entrepreneur, not only does your business evolve and grow, but your role in the business can evolve and grow, right? So if you're an entrepreneur and you start out just you as a sole proprietor, and 3 years later, you've got a couple of employees, and 10 years later, you've got a handful of employees, your role in the business changes, right? Because you start moving out of production and into entrepreneurial leadership and actually becoming, the person that's holding the vision for the whole business. So, this is something where I think our workflow actually has to adapt to those forever changing roles that we have. And so there's a few tips I just want to give you about workflow and how I'm handling it. But again, feel free to jump in and share things that are helping you. So one of the things I learned from an awesome woman, she used to live in Nashville. She now is based in New York, but her name's Lisa Zahia. She did some great events for women in business that I attended. And one of the things that she really taught me was basically, and Leslie, thanks for sharing that Sunday planning link. That's awesome. But Lisa really encouraged me because we're very different. She said, I get up every day, and at the beginning of my day, I write down every hour what I'm going to do. And when she told me that, I was like, you're crazy. I'm not doing that. That's like so much extra time. I don't have time to plot by the hour what I'm going to do every day, right? And she was like, look, please just try it. Like, give it a week and see if it makes a difference. I just have to say personally, shout out to Lisa, that crap changed my life. I don't do it every day, Okay, I'm not a person that can map out every hour of every day all the time. I'm just not that structured. I'm a little too creative, floaty for that. But I do it at least 3 days out of the week. And especially on days where I have stacked meetings and stacked deadlines, I just look at it all and I'm like, okay, there's things that have to get done by tomorrow. I'm going to map out each hour what's going to get accomplished. What is beautiful about this is I don't always accomplish what I've set out, right? But can I tell you how amazing it is that I can literally, looking at it, move the blocks around. And if I didn't get to something by the end of the day, it's something that I know can wait until tomorrow. And it's not something that I can't wait until tomorrow. And now I'm working till 10 o'clock because I didn't accomplish it. So it really changed my life to give myself this vision of my schedule. And I think sometimes what happens is we build a schedule, then we don't stick to it and we all feel guilty. So I just want to say, like, throw the guilt out. Who cares? It's not useful. It's an irrelevant piece. I mean, I validate everybody's feelings if you need to feel guilty, but I want you to just like feel it and move on. Because the truth is, when you set a schedule and you don't stick to it, the only thing that happens is you learn that you weren't accurate and you change it to become more accurate and realistic to what you're doing. So, you know, especially my friends who had kids last year, they really reminded me, like, we would set out a plan and then I would have to be okay with them feedbacking with me a few days later about whether or not that plan was achievable, because they had 3 kids at their house, right? And them sticking to the plan and the schedule was not the same as me doing it when I'm at home with my cats. Okay, very different scenario, right? And like, so Jenna, who works with me a lot, she was able to tell me right away, hey, sometimes because I have my little girl at home, I have to take a break in the afternoon and finish work after 5. Right? Because that's how her schedule works. So I'm going to be able to chat in the morning, get a bunch of stuff done. Then I'm going to take a few hours off. Then I'm going to come back and finish everything. I might already be done for the day, but that doesn't mean Jenna didn't actually get it done. She just needed to shift that schedule for herself. So, you know, that's something I think we have to talk to for ourselves. If we're working with a team, we have to really have figured this out and realize that some people's workflow is going to be different. Some people are more productive in the morning. Like some people get up at 6. I don't know how many of you are that people, right? Like you get up early, get a bunch of stuff done in the morning. I am not that person. Like, even if I got up at 6, I would lay around until like 9. I'm just not that person. I mean, I love getting up and watching the sunset, but I'm not going to go to work. My brain literally does not kick in. I always tell people I start work around 10, truly. I'm answering emails between 8 and 10. But I don't start work until 10 o'clock because my brain just doesn't kick on till about that time. I'm also, though, a person who can work really late at night. And I have a burst of energy a lot of times between 10 and midnight. So there are many times as an entrepreneur where I hop on and I accomplish a bunch of things right at the end of my day. I often don't go to bed till 1 or 2 in the morning. That's been my entire life, right? I tried to change that because everybody told me that adults don't do that. But the truth is, that's just not me. Right? Like I am just a late night person. I feel really good about getting things done when everybody else is sleeping. There's something about that. So, you know, that's where I think everybody has their own kind of approach. And like, you shouldn't feel guilty about your approach. My mom was always like, oh girl, you're going to be sleeping 8 hours as soon as you're 40. I've never slept 8 hours a night. You know, now I'm almost 46 and I keep telling her, I'm like, when does it happen? Because I'm still sleeping 5 or 6 hours a night. You know, it's really hard for me to sleep 8 hours at once. I think I have kind of an eternal issue of FOMO, where it's just sleeping 1/3 of my life seems crazy. So I'm only willing to sleep 25% of it. But I think we all have this. So you want to figure out what's the schedule, try it out, and then be okay if you need to change it and expect it to evolve. It won't always be the same. There'll be different parts of your life, different aspects of what's going on. And so some of us that worked from home before COVID, we had very different habits during COVID. And it was just because there was a major shift in what we were doing, right? And then, like I said, this idea of deep work, I just think for any of you, and especially those of you who are artists, I think you already know this, but like when people are artists or craftspeople, you're all sort of natural at deep work because your passion is going in and making this thing. And that thing usually doesn't take 20 minutes, usually takes a lot longer. So the deep work process is when you go into your studio and you dig deep into creating that one thing uninterrupted. Writers do this as well, right? So if you're working on a long article, you're working on a book, you're working on a great blog post, a lot of times you want that dedicated time, right? Just dig into that one project uninterrupted. The reason we feel that way is because literally when you are doing uninterrupted project work, your brain starts to function differently, right? So I really, when it comes to productivity and creativity and innovation, especially, I really want you to understand that having swaths of time that are uninterrupted to complete something, it will change the way your brain functions. I studied this a lot last year, and one of the most interesting people that did this was Carl Jung. And Carl Jung would sometimes spend 4 to 6 hours alone in his afternoons, uninterrupted, right? So this man who came up with like psychotherapy as a general practice, this guy who wrote books that are unbelievable about the human psyche, the reason he could put those things down on paper is because he actually had a personal practice, especially later in his life, of every afternoon being alone with the work. Now, not all of us are going to do that because this is a modern world. We're not living in the same world as Carl Jung was. But I think that concept, it really changed me last year, because there are times when I will get so much more done in a half a day because I did it uninterrupted and I allowed my brain to go into this workflow where it was super efficient and productive. But we don't get there when we only do it for an hour, when we only do it for half an hour. We don't reach that point and we don't shift ourselves in that way. So this is where we have to not be afraid to turn off our email and notifications. I was one of those people that I answer my emails all the time right away. I've stopped that. If I answer your email at the end of the day, when you sent it at 11 a.m., that's fine. That's still the same day. I don't have to answer you 2 seconds after you sent me the email. I'm just obsessed with stuff like that. That's my nature. So like I have to dial that back big time, because otherwise it's really going to affect my creativity and how productive I can be. I also now take chunks of the day where I can work on projects and I just disappear. And I just don't worry about it. You know, right now I'm working on some SEO for a website. And it's like when I work on that, I need like 4 uninterrupted hours. So I'm like, Thursday afternoon is it. I'm getting it done. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't make appointments for that time that day. So I'm again looking at that week and saying, do I have chunks of time where I'm not going to be interrupted? I'm not on Zoom every other hour. Because like if I'm on Zoom every other hour for that day, that's a different type of day. I can't be productive with certain projects, right? And then same thing with like, if you're working with a team, you got to tell them, I mean, in a loving way, but you have to actually say like, I can put on Slack, everybody go away now. Like, I'm not going to answer your messages. If you have questions, it better be an emergency and text me. But like, I'm not going to look at my email. Slack is going away. Everything is turning off because I have to record 2 classes and edit the video. And if I drag that out, it's going to take me all week to get it done. But if I just have dedicated time, it's going to work a lot better. So how does that deep work kind of play in for you? I think that's a great question for all of us to ask, especially going into this year. We've got another big year of change. We've got another big year of unexpected things where we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So how can we really prepare to have these different ways where we shift our workflow to accomplish things? Also make sure you have the right tools. So, I mean, I'm sure all of you could chat in right now and share with us what kind of tools you're using. I know for me right now, with most of the nonprofit clients, with most of the website clients, and with most of my own internal team at the school, we're using Slack for a lot of chat communications because it creates the threads and it's got a great mobile app and we can have different channels for different topics. I've also been using, but use even more now, Asana, which is like a project management software. That's where I have a lot of my tasks throughout the week. I can really see the progress when I'm completing things. We use Zoom for video conferencing as a team here, but with my other clients, I'm using GoToMeeting, I'm using Microsoft Meetings, I'm using Google Meet, all these different systems. I have them on my computer because my different clients, I like to use whatever they're comfortable with. Right. So I just have all those things very accessible. I tend to do a lot of my meetings on my laptop. So I'm not trying to have all those apps on my phone. Right. Like that's one thing I make a rule about. It's like, no, I don't want to have 17 million apps on my phone. That's annoying. So it's like a lot of times when I'm meeting with people, it's like going to be in a space where I can be on my computer. I do have Zoom for internal meetings on my phone. That way, with my own team, who I meet with more frequently, then I can take my phone on the porch, right? And that's okay. But it's like, I kind of have certain systems set up for how we're going to use the tech with the clients. I have cloud access for everything. So I particularly use Google Drive. You can also use like Microsoft has a whole cloud. Lots of people use Dropbox, but I have cloud access for everything. I put a lot of things in the cloud. Mostly for me, it's because hardware can die. Hardware can get dropped in a lake. Hardware can just be overworked and explode. Hardware can just get dropped on the floor and be broken. And so I want to make sure a lot of the things that I need, it's not dependent on the hardware I have, right? I can just throw my phone off the mountain and that's okay, because everything on my phone is in the cloud. I just need to go buy a new phone and grab it all, right? That's a really key thing that's always been important, but it became even more important over the last year because I really encouraged a lot of clients to go that direction. I'm like, don't have files on your computer that aren't backed up to the cloud, right? So I also use Carbonite, which backs up my computer all day long. It's like, I think $60 or $70 for the whole year. And I love it because if my computer, like I said, just falls off the desk or dies because it's getting too old, I can just go buy a new computer and literally in less than a day, all of my files can come from Carbonite into my computer. So I don't have to like start over. I don't feel like I lose data. And then also making sure you got proper security. So, and Rachel, I see your question. I am both actually. So my personal systems are all Apple, but because I run a school, our investment in the tech for our institute had to be PC tech because we just didn't have the money to invest in Macs. So like I would say, actually, it's probably a 75-25 split. I'm 75% on my Macintosh all the time. And then 25% of the time I'm working on the PCs. I have Carbonite on both my PC and my Mac. So yeah, I'm kind of a mixture of those things based on what I'm doing and which business we're talking about. But proper security is really just about passwords, in my opinion. So one tip, if you took nothing else away from today, when we're all working from home, and eventually we'll all be working hopefully from other places as well down the road, when your browser and your computer save all of your passwords, you are literally a hacker's dream. I just want to be honest about it. You're a hacker's dream. And when you're working from home and you're working from coffee shops and things like that, you are a hacker's dream if you have all your stuff on your computer. So once they hack into your Wi-Fi signal, they can just get all your passwords. It's something a lot of people, I know we talk about it all the time, but a lot of people just don't do anything about. I really just want to encourage you to think about it because home hacking is actually so much easier than when you're in an office, right? Our office here is protected in a different way than what my house is when I have internet there. And so even though it may not ever happen to you, I feel like it's a really good practice, especially those of us who are business owners. I have a lot of client information on my computer, right? So I have a ton of different things that are based on their usernames and passwords being saved, not my own. It's not just me. It's like I have everybody's hosting. I have their PayPal, right? Because I run their website and I have to have those things. So I use something called lastpass.com. It's actually a system that you can use a free version and it's amazing. And essentially what it does is it replaces your browser when it comes to remembering your passwords. And then it double encrypts them and it puts them in the cloud. And so instead of like Chrome remembering your passwords, or if you're on an Apple, you'll have like a keychain in your Mac, and it's got every password you've ever used on your computer. That thing is so scary. You need to like delete that thing once you get LastPass, right? LastPass I just love because it is free, and a lot of my computer programmer friends recommended it because the double encryption is really strong. So that saves all my passwords, all my client passwords. The great thing is, again, if my computer blows up, all my passwords are in the cloud. I can just log into LastPass and they're all there. I can install LastPass to my computer and it'll give me access to all of the passwords I've ever used. So I do want to say that. I saw a question, like there's also one called Dashlane that I really like. that's similar to LastPass. Like I said, LastPass is just my favorite because it's free. If you're a small business, you can use it alone for one person on one device and it's totally free. I think it's like $3 a month if you want to put it on like your computer, your phone, your tablet. So they're very, very affordable systems. Rachel, I see your question just about Norton, and security there. So because I'm a Mac person, it's funny, I don't need a lot of security on my computer. My computer is pretty solid. My computer has actually never been hacked. Is it a literal machine? And that's just because Macs are a little stronger in that way. I do think PCs, Norton is super useful. PCs are much more susceptible to viruses. And so I think that's where Norton comes into play. Hacking is usually about people stealing your data more than it is a virus, and so viruses really are coming from when you're downloading things. That's why actually I invested in an Apple in 2004. It was because I'm a person who lives on the internet for a living and I download every rando thing. Like I download plugins from people in other countries that work on WordPress. Like I needed a system that was just not going to be as susceptible. One other thing that you can do is really, like, especially if you have a PC, is wherever you purchased it, whether it's Best Buy or another provider, like just have a conversation with them about the options. Because I think Norton is something a lot of people know, but there's many other options. Clean My Mac, which I'm using on my Mac, also regularly scans my computer for malware. So if I ever did pick up anything, I will know immediately that day, because the system will flag it and say, hey girl, something weird got on your computer, right? And it'll locate the file for me and it'll allow me to delete the files. So that's what allows me to not have to take it into the shop all the time, right? Because I have a monitoring system, which is super helpful. So these are just some of the different tools that we've talked about. I just wanted to kind of have a grouping list. These are definitely tools that a lot of my students and clients are using that fall into all these categories: project management, using different video conferencing things, having access to the cloud. So you can find the things that you like. You might even test a few things out before you agree to one. Use some free trials, test things out, because there's so many different pieces of software that do the same thing. You want to find the thing that's most intuitive to you. And then, like I said, just some tips for, creativity. I know for me, that's a huge part of my job, is actually being smart and really having innovation and creativity at the forefront of what I'm doing. That's why people hire me, is for my ideas. And Rachel and Joyce, I see your questions. I'm going to answer those in just one second. But essentially, to me, it's really important that my creativity not be impacted by what's happening. And especially this last year of stress, that was a hard thing to navigate, because there were days where I was just tired. I was like, I'm over the world. I don't feel that creative. I don't care about marketing. I'd like to take a nap. Okay, that's where I'm at. So I had to figure out how to really navigate that again from a workflow, day-to-day kind of process. And so I really put together some things to keep myself creative. One is planning meetings on a regular schedule. So really having days where I have meetings, days where I don't, or chunks of time where meetings are okay, chunks of time where they're not, and having some creative people to talk to throughout the week. Being alone without my creative people around me made a big difference. So I had to see them and talk to them. Especially in digital marketing, we can't know it all. So if you're in a silo, it's going to get pretty lonely pretty quick, and you're going to suffer as far as how well you can do in your own work. So I had groups on Facebook that I met with. I had different people where I was like, please, I need to interact with you every Tuesday afternoon, so that I'm kicking off my week with other thoughts and other perspectives. And really making time for one-on-one as well as group. Really knowing that there's some people where it was really valuable, like clients. We started having more weekly meetings so that I would stay on track, but also they would. Every week I'd be like, we're going to check it on Thursday. I'm going to tell you if I did everything that I said I was going to do on this project, and if not, why. But I want the client to tell me they're writing their website content. Because if you're just going to float away and get procrastinatory and ditch out on doing your content for 3 months, that's really going to hurt my productivity of the project. So we had to have these check-ins. Sometimes they were just 15 minutes, or what we call standing meetings, where everybody's standing up and you're just shooting off, let's go over the basics. That way we're not wasting an hour on things talking about stuff, but we're still like checking in to have that accountability. And then I really did ask people to turn on their video a lot of times. I didn't do that today because I know these Fridays, sometimes it's easier for people to listen. Friday is not always the easiest day to do a class like this. But for a lot of longer classes, especially anything 2 hours or longer, I would tell people, I really want you on the video because otherwise you're not engaged. You know, I mean, you can be listening, but you're probably doing a bunch of other stuff while you're doing it. And so if I wanted our classes to have real connection, you know, and I wanted our meetings to be really productive, a lot of times I'd be like, look, you can be in your pajamas, in your bed. I don't care. Your dog can be there. Your kids can be there. We're not judging anybody for what's happening in the background. So feel free to show up where you're at. That made it a lot more comfortable too for people to do it, which was really great. And then we've already talked about it, but again, eat, stretch, walk, take care of yourself, make sure you're paying attention to your body and its basic needs. I work sometimes on websites for a long time. All of a sudden, like 4 hours goes by and I'm like, I have to pee and I have to run to the bathroom, right? I shouldn't have to do that. Basic self-care says I should be listening enough to know when my body says, hey, you got to get up and do the most basic functions, right? So I think, again, as entrepreneurs, we get busy. As professionals, we're working on technology. It's easy for us to detach from our actual bodies if we're not careful, right? And then we've already talked about this, but again, what days and hours are you going to work? How many days off do you have per week? Entrepreneurs especially, pick a day off and take it and stick to it. Oh my gosh, please. That's the number one piece of advice I give to new entrepreneurs. What's your day off? And don't mess it up. Because if you don't have a day off, you'll go crazy. Easily you will go crazy. Entrepreneurs, we are all a little crazy to begin with, but we know this, right? We can work 7 days a week all the time because it's always there. So you have to have those boundaries. That became even more important last year. And then really use extra time that you have to really fuel your creativity through learning, through talking to your friends and colleagues, and having other perspectives in your world, right? Because those connections are really what are gonna get us excited, gonna motivate us, gonna push us out of our comfort zones. A lot of us really missed that last year from a creativity and like entrepreneurial perspective, right? Is having that other energy around you that you feed off of. So you gotta create that space. If you're gonna work from home and not go back to your office, in a lot of ways, we still gotta create those personal connections that are so strong. So I know we've got just a few minutes. I want to answer some of the questions. So what do you put on your iPhone or iPad for security? So again, for me, I have paid for LastPass. LastPass protects anything I'm doing on my iPhone or my iPad. I'm also very specific about what devices I use for what. So I will say, like, my iPhone or iPad don't need as much security as my computer because I'm not doing as much client work on my iPhone or iPad. You know, but I use LastPass there. I also have some cleaning systems that'll scan for the malware just to make sure there's nothing on my phone regularly that are similar to clean your Mac. And so those, again, you can ask any type of person that's a Mac person, even going to their website and digging in, you'll see they have lots of options. And this sort of goes to Joyce's question. Do you have a shop in Asheville that you recommend for Macs? So yeah, Charlotte Street Computers closed this week. They have, like, I think their final sale today and tomorrow on anything left in their store. There is 2 other Apple stores in town. Now, I actually haven't been to either of them in a long time because Charlotte Street is so close, but I know there's one that is in Biltmore Town Square. And I've heard that's a pretty good place to go. And then there's a newer one that just opened up. But we really only have kind of like 2 options for like literal shops or stores where you can actually go and buy product and talk to people. But I know that the one in Biltmore, I heard a lot of good things about how helpful the folks were there. But I definitely think, you know, if you have an iPhone, you can go to Verizon, you can go to US Cellular or wherever you're getting your provider from, and you can talk to them too about the security piece. And I think it's really important to be clear with them. What are you storing on your phone and on your tablet? So they understand what kind of security you actually need. You know, do you need something to scan for viruses or malware? Do you need something actually to protect usernames and passwords? I think for all of us on our phones, we should at least protect our online banking information if we're using our banking apps. So like, that's a good reason to have that security. But we're right at 11:29. If there's any other questions, feel free to unmute. I'm glad to stay for an extra minute. Feel free to chat in. I will put my email in there. I want to invite you, Joyce, if you want to email me, because somebody just messaged me about this new Mac place that's in town that I haven't been to. I will gladly pull that email up and find it and try to share it with everyone. You could probably Google it as well. But I know we do have a new opportunity that just happened in a new store that opened. But thank you all for spending your Friday morning with me as usual. I super appreciate it. Thanks to the Western Women's Business Center and the Small Business Center for bringing me back to share with everybody. And please, if you have any other questions or just want to talk shop anytime, email me. I'm always glad to grab Zoom coffee and have conversations with people. I'm also glad, hopefully in not too distant future, like mid-May, to like actually meet people for coffee. So if you'd like to take walks or any of that stuff, I'm on the west side, so always feel free to reach out to me. But yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful to be able to hear your perspective on all that as a digital creative person. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Rachel. And hey, Nancy, great to see you. Glad you were here. And Leslie, of course, it's great to see you as well.
Oh, thank you so much for all you do. It's always so fabulous. Thank you very much.
So glad.
Thank you, Sarah. This was wonderful. I actually got inspired to move to a place where I can look out the window during our talk, but then I didn't bring my charger, so I dropped off just a minute ago, but thanks for having me back in. Work from home problems. I did put the links in the chat to follow up with us for other future trainings we have, and also to reach out if you want coaching or just have questions about your business. We're always here for you at Western Women's Business Center.
Great. Well, have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you.